Remember those Saturday mornings wandering down the high street, popping into Woolworths for pick and mix before browsing the latest CDs at our price? If you're a true Brit of a certain age, these 17 vanished shops will hit you right in the nostalgia. Did you know that when Woolworths closed in 2009, it left behind 27,000 unemployed workers and over £385 million in unpaid debts? But here's the twist. Some of these beloved stores didn't just die from competition, they were victims of corporate greed, dodgy accounting, and spectacular mismanagement that would make even today's failing businesses look competent. Woolworths wasn't just a shop, it was a British institution that somehow managed to sell everything from sweets to saucepans under one gloriously chaotic roof. Opening its first British store in Liverpool in 1909, Woolies became the place where generations of Brits experienced their first taste of retail therapy. The pick and mix counter alone generated £30 million annually at its peak. That's a lot of fizzy cola bottles and chocolate mice. What most people don't realise is that Woolworths actually invented the concept of the modern high street chain store in Britain. They pioneered the nothing over sixpence pricing strategy that made shopping accessible to working class families for the first time. The controversial bit? The company was systematically destroyed by debt loading after demerging from Kingfisher in 2001. By November 2008, with £385 million in unpaid debts, all 807 stores entered administration. The final insult came when Shop Direct bought the Woolworths brand name in February 2009, keeping it online only before eventually shutting that down too in 2015. If you're enjoying this trip down memory lane, stick around as I'll reveal which famous politician's family fortune was built on one of these failed shops' demise. Rumbelows was where your parents probably rented their first colour television in the 1970s, paying weekly instalments that eventually cost 3 times the retail price. Started in 1969 by Radio Rentals and Thorn EMI, Rumbelows dominated the electrical goods market when owning a TV outright was a luxury few could afford. At its height in 1989, the chain operated 500 stores across Britain. The shops had a unique smell, a mixture of new electronics and cigarette smoke from the staff who chain smoked behind the counter while explaining why you needed an extended warranty on your new Betamax player. Here's something controversial. Rumbelows actually knew VHS would win the format war, but continued pushing Betamax because they had higher profit margins on the units. They deliberately sold customers technology they knew would become obsolete. The chain's demise in February 1995 wasn't just about changing shopping habits. Internal documents revealed that Rumbelows was systematically overcharging on repair services, sometimes fixing items that weren't actually broken. When consumer watchdogs started investigating, parent company Thorn EMI pulled the plug rather than face potential scandal, leaving 3,000 employees jobless. The company had been losing £12 million yearly and remarkably had never made a profit in its entire existence under Thorn. British home stores started in 1928 with a radical idea: no item would cost more than £1. For 88 years, BHS was where Middle Britain bought sensible clothes, affordable homeware, and surprisingly decent cafe food. Your nan probably still has BHS towels in her airing cupboard that have outlasted 2 marriages and 3 house moves. The BHS story took a dark turn when Sir Philip Green sold it for £1 to Dominic Chappell in 2015. Chappell had been declared bankrupt 3 times and had no retail experience. What followed was one of the biggest corporate disasters in British history. While 11,000 employees worried about their jobs, Chappell was spotted racing his yacht in the Bahamas and spending £1.5 million of company money on personal expenses. The real outrage: Green had extracted £580 million in dividends from BHS over the years, leaving a £571 million pension deficit. When the company went into administration in 2016, 20,000 pensioners faced reduced payments. Green eventually paid £363 million to settle, but only after being threatened with losing his knighthood. The last BHS stores had the most middle-class closing down sales ever. People queuing for hours to buy £3 cushions and half-price lighting fixtures. Littlewoods was more than just a shop. It was a British working-class dream factory. Founded by John Moores in 1923, it started as a football pools company before expanding into retail. At one point, 1 in 3 British families did the Littlewoods pools every week, hoping to win enough to escape their council house. The catalogue shopping empire was revolutionary, bringing department store goods to people who couldn't travel to city centres. The twice-yearly Littlewoods catalogue was thicker than a phone book and treated with more reverence. Families would gather around the kitchen table, circling items they couldn't afford but desperately wanted. The shocking secret: Littlewoods deliberately targeted low-income families with credit at interest rates that would be illegal today, sometimes reaching 49.9% APR. When the stores closed in 2005, it marked the end of an era. The Liverpool headquarters, once employing 11,000 people, became a symbol of urban decay. In 2018, the abandoned Littlewoods building mysteriously caught fire, destroying what urban explorers had discovered was essentially a time capsule of 1970s retail, complete with unsold stock still on the shelves. Comet burst onto the scene in 1933, starting as a battery and radio shop in Hull. By the 1980s, it had become Britain's second largest electrical retailer, famous for its warehouse-style stores and aggressive price matching. Every British household in the 1990s had at least one Comet carrier bag serving as a bin liner. Here's what they didn't want you to know. Comet made almost no profit on the actual electronics. The real money came from extended warranties that staff were instructed to sell using highly questionable tactics. Former employees have revealed they were trained to tell customers that manufacturers' warranties were basically worthless, and that without Comet's protection plan, repairs could cost more than a new machine. Staff who didn't hit warranty targets faced disciplinary action. The company's 2012 bankruptcy left 7,000 unemployed and exposed another dodgy practice. Comet had been selling warranty policies right up until the day they announced closure, knowing full well the coverage would be worthless. Op Capita, the private equity firm that owned Comet, walked away with millions in management fees while suppliers were left with £300 million in unpaid bills. Speaking of shocking revelations, keep watching because I'm about to expose how one of these shops was secretly used for government surveillance. Blockbuster UK arrived in 1989 and revolutionised how Brits consumed entertainment. Friday night at Blockbuster became a national ritual, arguing over which film to rent, lying about your age to rent 18 certificates, and inevitably forgetting to return videos on time. Those late fees, they generated £16 million annually in the UK alone. The UK operation was actually more innovative than its American parent. British Blockbusters trialled DVD rentals, game rentals, and even popcorn sales years before the US stores. The controversial part, Blockbuster UK had the chance to buy Netflix's international rights for just £50 million in 2000, but dismissed it as a very small niche business. The executive who made that decision later admitted he didn't understand what streaming was. When Blockbuster UK went into administration in 2013, something bizarre happened. The stores were so integral to British culture that hundreds of communities petitioned to save their local branch. The last Blockbuster in Britain, in Clapham, became an impromptu shrine when it closed, with people leaving flowers and handwritten memories about first dates and family film nights. C&A might have seemed quintessentially British, but it was actually a Dutch company that operated in the UK from 1922 to 2001. Your mum definitely bought your school clothes there, probably while you had a minor breakdown about having to wear Clockhouse jeans instead of Levi's. The shocking truth about C&A is that they pioneered fast fashion decades before Primark or H&M. They were producing new lines every 2 weeks in the 1960s, using a supply chain that would make modern retailers jealous. The dark side. C&A was one of the first retailers caught using sweatshop labour in the 1990s, leading to protests outside their Oxford Street flagship that they tried to suppress with legal injunctions. When C&A announced their UK withdrawal in 2000, they claimed it was due to market conditions. Internal documents later revealed the real reason. The family-owned company was in a bitter inheritance dispute, and closing the UK operation was essentially spite. 12,000 British jobs were lost because Dutch billionaires couldn't agree on who owned what. Dixons started as a photography studio in 1937 and grew to dominate British electrical retail. By the 1990s, if you wanted a camera, computer or camcorder, Dixons was unavoidable. They sponsored the Bill on ITV, ensuring their brand was burned into the British consciousness every Tuesday and Thursday night. The dirty secret of Dixons was their infamous interest-free credit deals. They weren't interest-free at all. The interest was built into inflated prices. A TV that cost £400 cash would be £599 on interest-free credit. When consumer groups exposed this, Dixons simply renamed it Spread the Cost and carried on. Even more controversial, Dixons salespeople were instructed to profile customers based on appearance and postcodes, offering different prices to different demographics. Dixons didn't really die. It morphed into Currys' PC world through a series of mergers that saw thousands of jobs lost. The Dixons brand lives on at airports, selling overpriced adapters to desperate travellers who forgot their phone chargers. Our Price Records was where British music lovers congregated from 1971 to 2004. With 300 stores at its peak, it wasn't just about buying music, it was about being seen buying the right music. The listening booths were essentially dating apps for indie kids where you deliberately play obscure bands, loudly hoping to attract similarly minded souls. Here's what nobody talks about. Our Price was at the centre of chart manipulation allegations. Record labels would allegedly bulk buy their own releases from strategic Our Price locations, knowing these sales were counted for the charts. Industry insiders claimed that throughout the 1980s, certain singles achieved higher positions through coordinated purchasing campaigns. The stores would receive unusual bulk orders on Monday mornings, always paid in cash. The company's collapse wasn't just about downloads killing CDs. Our Price was hemorrhaging money through an elaborate fraud scheme where managers were creating fake returns and pocketing refunds. When Virgin bought the chain in 1998, they discovered over £20 million in ghost stock that existed only on paper. Virgin Megastores transformed music retail when it launched in 1971. The Oxford Street flagship was less shop, more cultural institution, where John Lydon was arrested for wearing a Sex Pistols t-shirt and where queues for midnight album launches stretched around the block. Virgin Megastores made record shopping an event, not just a transaction. Richard Branson promised Virgin Megastores would never leave the high street right before selling the entire chain to Zavvi in 2007 for £1. The hidden truth. Branson knew the business was doomed but needed to maintain his reputation, so he structured the deal to make it look like a management buyout, while secretly maintaining control through offshore companies. When Virgin Megastores became Zavvi and promptly collapsed, 3,400 employees discovered their Virgin pensions had been transferred to a Guernsey-based scheme that was virtually worthless. Branson, meanwhile, had extracted £100 million in brand licensing fees in the chain's final years while claiming the business was losing money. MFI, Mullard Furniture Industries, was where Britain learned to hate flat-pack furniture before IKEA arrived. From 1964 to 2008, MFI kitchens and wardrobes furnished millions of British homes, usually after relationship testing assembly sessions involving Allen keys and incomprehensible instructions, the dirty secret nobody discusses. MFI deliberately made their instruction manuals confusing to boost their assembly service revenue. A whistleblower revealed that clear instructions existed but were kept in-store only, so staff could charge £75 per item to build furniture that customers had already paid for. The company made £40 million annually from assembly services that should have been unnecessary. MFI's collapse left 111 stores closed and 1,400 employees redundant. But worse was the fate of customers who'd paid deposits for kitchens, never delivered. Over £50 million in deposits simply vanished, with administrators claiming the money had been commingled with operating expenses. Translation: executives paid themselves bonuses with customer deposits while the company was already insolvent. Allders was Croydon's crown jewel, the third largest department store in Britain after Harrods and Selfridges, operating from 1862 to 2005. It was where South Londoners went for everything from christening gowns to coffins. The Croydon store was so vast it had its own postcode and weather system. Seriously, the top floor was consistently 3 degrees colder than street level. The dark aspect of Allders was its complex ownership structure during the apartheid era. Throughout the 1970s and 80s, Allders had ties to South African business interests during the height of international sanctions. When questions about these connections emerged in the early 2000s, the resulting negative publicity contributed to declining sales, though management blamed changing shopping habits. The real tragedy was that Allders owned some of the most valuable retail property in Britain, all sold off for a fraction of its worth to property developers with mysterious offshore connections. The Croydon store alone was worth £300 million, but sold for £65 million to a company registered in the Cayman Islands that immediately flipped it for triple the price. Safeway arrived in Britain in 1962 and grew to become the fourth largest supermarket chain. What made Safeway special was its focus on quality over price. They introduced Britain to exotic concepts like fresh pasta, olive oil that wasn't medicinal, and bread that wasn't white sliced. Here's the conspiracy theory that might actually be true. Safeway's 2004 takeover by Morrisons wasn't just business documents released under Freedom of Information. Suggests the government actively encouraged the merger to prevent American Walmart from entering the UK market through Safeway acquisition. The Competition Commission's approval came with unusual speed after closed-door meetings with Treasury officials. The death of Safeway meant the loss of 1,200 stores and devastated small suppliers who'd built their businesses around Safeway's local sourcing policies. Morrisons immediately cancelled contracts with 3,000 British suppliers in favour of cheaper imports, destroying numerous family businesses that had supplied Safeway for generations. Focus DIY emerged in 1987 from the merger of 6 regional chains and briefly threatened B&Q's dominance. With 180 stores, Focus was where practical Brits went for no-nonsense DIY supplies without B&Q's attempts at lifestyle marketing. Their paint mixing service was legendary. They could match any colour you brought in, including that weird shade of green from your nan's bathroom circa 1973. The shocking truth. Focus was deliberately destroyed by its private equity owners, Cerberus Capital. They bought the chain in 2007, immediately sold all the property to themselves at below market rates, then charged Focus massive rents to operate in its own stores. This sale and leaseback scam netted Cerberus £200 million while loading Focus with unsustainable debts. When Focus went under in 2011, 3,900 employees lost their jobs. Many had worked there since leaving school, believing they had secure employment with a growing company. The pension fund was mysteriously £40 million short, with investigators unable to trace where the money went, thanks to a web of offshore transactions. Zavvi's story is the shortest and perhaps saddest on this list. Born from Virgin Megastores ashes in 2007, Zavvi was doomed from the start. The management buyout team paid £1 for the business, but inherited £20 million in debt and supplier contracts that Virgin had negotiated, knowing they were unsustainable. The killer blow came when Woolworths distribution company EUK collapsed, taking Zavvi's entire supply chain with it. But here's what they didn't tell you. Virgin had deliberately tied Zavvi to EUK with ironclad contracts, knowing EUK was already in trouble. Branson needed someone else to take the fall for Virgin Megastores' failure, and Zavvi's management walked right into the trap. Zavvi lasted just 15 months, closing in January 2009 with 3,400 job losses. Former employees later discovered their redundancy packages had been restructured through administration, meaning they received 10% of what they were owed, while secured creditors, including companies linked to the original Virgin Group, were paid in full. Beatties was paradise for model enthusiasts from 1958 to 2005. If you wanted model trains, airfix kits, or die-cast cars, Beatties was Mecca. The stores smelled of glue and dreams, staffed by enthusiasts who could tell you the difference between a Hornby R060 and R061 without checking. The controversy surrounding Beatties involves corporate espionage. Competitor Models Inc. allegedly planted employees in Beatties stores to gather intelligence on suppliers and pricing. When Beatties developed exclusive products with Hornby, detailed specifications mysteriously appeared in Chinese factories before launch. The resulting legal battles drained Beatties' resources, contributing to their eventual sale to W.H. Smith. W.H. Smith promised to maintain Beatties as a specialist chain, but immediately fired all the expert staff, replacing them with minimum wage workers who couldn't tell a locomotive from a tea cosy within 2 years. They'd killed the brand entirely, selling remaining stock to internet retailers for pennies on the pound. Freeman Hardy Willis shod British feet from 1875 to the 1990s. Every British child of a certain age remembers the foot measuring machines and the ceremonial trying on of school shoes while your mum insisted on pressing the toe to check for room to grow. They were also infamous for their bog-off deals that weren't quite what they seemed. The lesser-known story of Freeman Hardy Willis involves quality control issues that plagued the chain in the 1980s. Customers frequently complained that shoes would fall apart after exactly 13 weeks, just outside the return period. Whether this was poor manufacturing or something more sinister was never proven, though competitors certainly benefited from the reputation damage. The chain's demise was hastened by the discovery that many of their leather shoes contained no leather at all. Trading standards investigations revealed systematic mislabeling, with genuine leather uppers actually being polyurethane. The resulting fines and compensation claims finished off the already struggling chain, though executives managed to transfer assets to new companies before declaring bankruptcy. These 17 shops employed 150,000 people and generated billions. Their demise wasn't internet competition. It was greed and outright fraud. Private equity extracted billions while workers suffered. High streets never recovered. We traded Saturday shopping traditions and knowledgeable staff for next-day delivery and chatbots. Convenience won, community lost. If this trip down memory lane has stirred up some nostalgia or anger at what we've lost, please hit subscribe, share your own memories in the comments, and remember that every time you buy local instead of online, a private equity executive sheds a tiny tear. Cheers for watching, and I'll see you in the next one where we explore forgotten British brands that were actually ahead of